And we are live, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Print Podcast. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Damien Burks. Damien Burks is a senior vice president at a luxurious organization. He's a cloud security, application security expert. Oh, I forgot, even DevSecOps. Yes, he's a DevSecOps expert, seasoned practitioner, a mentor, a community builder, and overall a phenomenal leader in the cybersecurity space. I'm so happy to have him here today. Damien, welcome to the show, my friend.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate the introduction. It was beautiful. Got me flattered over here.
I can't help but smile right now because I know you personally. I'm like, dude, I got Damien on the show. Oh my God, it's gonna be fun. Because a lot of people they don't get to they see the professional Damien, but they don't get to know the holistic Damien of how knowledgeable you are in so many different things. You know,
Yeah.
And this episode here, you know, I want to share your story, and I want to give people that perspective of who you are and how you became the senior VP you are today.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I'm excited to share my story.
Lovely, lovely. Before we get to business though, we're going to talk about other business, anime.
All right.
My favorite anime of all time is Dragon Ball Z. Some people disagree. I tell them their opinion is irrelevant to me. I want to hear your opinion. What is your favorite anime? Because I know you and me were both nerds. We're you know, I grew up as a gamer. I grew up watching nothing but anime, and you know, I'd love to hear some of your favorites.
Oh,
you don't have to pick one, but some of your favorites, like iconic animes, were like, hey, if you're looking for a good plot, good story, good main character, good shonen, all of it.
Oh my goodness. All right. So some of my favorites. I mean, I grew up watching anime. Especially my teenage years is really when it kind of exploded for me.
Yeah.
Naruto is one of my all-time favorites. I have all 72 volumes of the manga. I've seen the entire anime.
You said you have all 72 volumes of the manga.
All 72 right there in that bookshelf right over
there.
I have all 72 volumes. I'm collecting Boruto. But my top two, I would say, is Initial D and Naruto. Initial D is a 90s based anime about cars. And I've always been a big car person. When I was being a gamer, Need for Speed was always my go-to. I'm still playing racing games. As of late, more of Gran Turismo, because Need for Speed is kind of taking a negative turn. It kind of sucks these days. And Naruto is one of the other favorites, really because of how he persevered. Like, dude came out the gate saying that I want to be Hokage someday. Literally had the world turned against him, turned the tables, and became Hokage at the end of the anime, and got married to one of my favorite characters. I'm just like, bro, at this point, Naruto is goated status. I can take a lot. I can learn a lot from him because, you know, Naruto inspired me to be the person I am today. Like, no matter how hard it gets, just keep going, keep persevering. And Initial D, of course, is, you know, just Eurobeat. That's the other side of me, all about cars. So.
Yeah, I have to applaud for Naruto there, because Naruto is one of the most iconic animes, period. And yeah, you know, his story is a true underdog story where literally no one believed in him. No one believed in his potential. No one believed, you know, I mean, there were maybe like a few characters, you know, maybe one or two characters that actually believed in him. But for a long time, for most of his life, he was hated. No one liked him.
Yeah,
you know, everybody hated him because they reminded them of the demon fox that attacked the village years ago. You know, and just seeing how he was able to grow and really work hard on himself. You know, work hard on himself, and then flip the tables around. And now everybody looks up to him. You know, he's the leader of the village. He went from the most hated man, hated kid, hated baby in the village to the most loved man.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful story, man. That's a beautiful story. To your point though about race cars. So were you like, did you spend time like as a mechanic at all? You know, or did you always like tweak cars with your parents? You know, you go to the shop all the time, or you into that Fast and Furious, you know, race car type of vibe?
Yeah, I was a big Fast and Furious fan until after Fast Five. Like after Fast Five, it became more about transforming cars rather than about racing.
And superpowers, by the way. Superpowers.
Yeah, superpowers, right? Yeah, so we got the whole shebang, right? Don't make sense. How the hell does that come? You know, whatever.
Yeah.
So Fast and Furious came out from when I was a young kid. I was like 4 or 5, always been in the cars, and Fast and Furious was the first movie I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted a Nissan Skyline GTR. Like Paul Walker was my and still is my idol to this day.
Rest in peace.
Not just for yes, indeed, not just for him and what he did and the character he played in the Fast and Furious franchise, but just as a person, like he was very giving, he was very respectable. Everybody had something good to say about him. He was a great person overall. Um, and when it come down to it, I didn't have any experience in mechanic. I did take a mechanic class in high school though, because that was one area I wanted to go down when I was evaluating my career options, and didn't necessarily work out. But I always had a key interest in cars, and I actually drive a manual now. I only drive manuals. I drive a Subaru WRX. I did not get the STI, but one of my dream cars, I was able to bag that, and my dream car is actually a Porsche.
Really?
GT3. So yeah,
Yeah, that Porsche is
yep.
coming soon. That Porsche
Oh
is
my
coming soon,
God,
baby.
I can't wait.
I love it.
So
I love
yeah,
it, man. Yeah. So, with the the love for cars, it sounds like you were very handy growing up as a kid. Like you always like building Legos, toys, just building stuff. You were that kid that bought the toy set where you had a million instructions to build it. Huh? Were you that kid?
yeah,
I hated those.
yep. I was that kid that would go in and I would break something intentionally, take it
Wow.
apart, and then try to put it together. So there's been plenty of times that I screwed up my mom's computer.
Shout out to mom. Shout out
Yeah,
to mom.
right. I messed up my mom's computer, and it was the only computer in the house. So that really kind of forced me to learn how to fix things that I broke. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love that. And so, how old were you? When you realized you want to be a tech bro, or like an engineer or cybersecurity practitioner, or was it like did you say it like, hey, I want to be a cybersecurity person growing up, or was it more of you know you just kept messing around with video games with computers, and it just kept going.
So I would say like gaming was more or less the intro for me to getting into tech as a whole. I knew
Right.
that I knew I wanted to do something with video games. I knew I wanted to do something with computers.
Hmm.
So when I started gaming, I started just fooling around with, Nintendo GameCube. Most of us had that type of console when we were growing up. And I transitioned into PC gaming when I got into my teenage years. My grandfather gave me his old compact. Or if y'all don't know nothing about compact, back then compacts were legit, but they were also hyper customizable, depending on what you could potentially do with them. So for me, um, my gaming I started to explore it and take a deep dive in when I was in my teenage years, and I started to explore modding. I started to learn about torrenting,
You mind
all of that
sharing
stuff.
what those mean, modding and torrenting?
Oh, so mods are basically
I'm a gamer.
like
I know what you mean, man.
yeah. So
That's the folks.
when so when you talk about modding a game, it's really something that's not supposed to be done,
Right.
but ultimately
Is
it's
it
like
legal?
adding a yeah, it's not really legal.
Yeah.
It's not really legal. So I was doing things that I wasn't supposed to be doing, especially with torrenting. Is essentially it's like it's like LimeWire, like you're downloading different like MP3s and stuff from other computers on the various different network that is shared with various other different computers. And I know if folks who are familiar with the whole LimeWire thing in the computer aid situation, you knew that if you had LimeWire and you were downloading MP3s, you most likely got a bunch of viruses that you didn't need back in the day. I was also a part of that as well, wherein I was torrenting mods and installing them, but trying to figure out why my computer would crash at random times or why files were miraculously disappearing. But the key thing is modding was something that really made me want to be a video game developer, because I felt that video games themselves with those mods, some of the mods were really good ideas.
Right.
Um, so fast forward, that's how I really broke into getting into just tech in general. I knew I
Yeah.
wanted to do it. So I was in high school. When I got to high school, I took CS classes. I signed up for them. So
Wait,
I
wait,
started.
wait. You say CS classes. You sign up at the community college.
At high school. There, at
In
my high
high school,
school, we had computer
in
science.
high school, they had CS classes in high school.
Yep. So my
Amazing.
high school, we had computer science classes. I learned how to program in Java,
Love it.
and I took 3 CS classes before I graduated. One of them was an AP computer science class that
Come on.
actually forces me to take the computer science AP test. I did not pass it because there was just so many other things that were going on, but I still pushed through anyway.
Yeah.
And during that time, while I was there, I developed a lot of Java applications, and I also developed my first Hangman game, Assassin's Creed themed Hangman game. In C#.
What? Yo,
Yep,
Assassin's Creed. Oh my God, you're taking me back. You're taking me back.
yep. Assassin's
Wow.
Creed themed Hangman game in C#. And I realized that the dream of me becoming a video game developer was probably not the best approach because I didn't like what it took to build the video game. And I still knew that I wanted to do something in the realm of computer science, but I didn't know what it is that I wanted to do. So that led me ultimately to go into college and major in computer science. But I want to mention one more other thing that really inspired me to look at tech from a holistic point of view was that in that same high school, I also took a PC building class
Okay.
one semester, and I learned how to basically take an entire computer apart and build it from scratch, put it all back together. And we also talked a little bit about how to troubleshoot the computer. So I learned pretty much everything that they would teach in the A+ certification exam in a
Yeah.
semester in high school. I learned all of that.
That's amazing. Shout out to your high school, for championing and investing in those courses.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think exposure, if we want to make a real change in this country, when it comes
Mhm.
to more people of color from different communities in STEM, I think
Yes.
early exposure is the cheat code. If we want
Yes.
more African American males in the STEM space, we need to champion STEM more and also give them that exposure early on. So kudos to the community and the teachers and the curriculum for making that happen.
Yes, indeed.
Did y'all do hackathons by any chance during high
We
school?
we did.
I did. Okay.
When I was in high school
What's a
back
hackathon,
then,
by the way, Damien?
so it's basically okay. This is not the textbook definition of what a hackathon is, right? So it's not just all about hacking. When people really think about it, it's like, oh, you're hacking into things. A hackathon is essentially a 24-hour event or longer, depending on if it's corporate or not corporate sponsored, that where a bunch of builders get together and they build a tangible product and demo it at the very end of the hackathon that meets whatever criteria that was set by the organizers, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I know I don't know what the acronym stands for, but I know MLH is one of the predominant hackathon organizers where they go to like different universities and set up hackathons. Back then in high school, my school district, well, not the school district, but school districts in the state of Texas and Houston at the time, they would all have hackathons and invite different schools from the different school districts there for like a weekend, and not a weekend, but for a day within a weekend. It'd be like maybe 6 hours, maybe 8 hours. And we would basically get there at 6 in the morning, and we would have a list of problems that we would have to get and we would have to solve. And back then, we didn't have Stack Overflow. We couldn't
Say that
Google
again.
it.
Say
We
that
didn't
again.
have Stack Overflow.
We're spoiled
Back
right now, folks.
we didn't have Stack Overflow. We weren't allowed to Google either. So what we knew about the language was what we knew. And if we didn't know it, we had access or authorization to go and look at the programming language specification and read through the documentation about each one of the different like libraries. So with that packet, you have different problems. And you know how the algorithms that they have on LeetCode and HackerRank, those were the problems that we had to solve. So back then I had exposure to algorithms that I had to solve way before LeetCode and HackerRank ever came out and was really publicized within the community, right?
Wow.
So we would sit there, we'll go through them, and we had to solve them before the end of the day. And the team that won or that solved the most at the highest points ended up winning trophies, and they take that back with them. That was the local and district hackathons.
Right.
The big hackathon was HP Code Wars. So HP put together a hackathon that invites high school students out. And at the time I think it was just national, right? Within the US, but I think they started moving it towards Singapore. So now, back then, what they did was they invite a list of high schools out, and you come to the HP headquarters. Back then, it was a HP office in Houston, and we sit down and we basically go through and we do the exact same thing. But this time, if you are there were things at stake. So if you were I think back then, if you were a senior in high school and you placed, what they would do was they would give you a job working for HP, and they pay for you to go to your education. So you were not only working as a software developer for HP, they were also helping you go to school to get your degree as well. So that exposure back then was like pivotal for me to be able to make certain decisions. But I remember Cold Wars. Like I still had like posters hanging around somewhere in here in my closet, probably, about just like me having different me being able to go there and just code and build different things and try to place. So yeah, that's basically hackathons in general. Yeah, so there were plenty.
I love it.
No Stack Overflow, no Leak Code, no Google, just straight like what you know is what you know, and you got to come up with some crazy things to solve some of these problems with the algorithm. So
yeah, tales from the trenches, folks. Tales from the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you studied computer science during undergrad, and I couldn't help but notice, Damien, that you completed a computer science bachelor's degree in 3 years.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. That's unheard of, man. By the way, folks, for context, I'm barely a year older than Damien, but the guys, as you can tell, he's next level.
Appreciate that, dude.
Talk about it, man.
Yeah. So
how do you get a computer science degree? One of the most rigorous curriculums offered at a college, number one. And then number two, they tend to have more units than the average curriculum in a college. Yes. So let's get into it.
So since I knew that I wanted to go into computer science, my sophomore year in college, I strategically set myself up to take dual credit courses in college that transferred over to my university of choice. So when I walked into college, I had 15, I think it was either 12 to 15 credit hours already done.
So that, like, give or take about a semester's worth done.
Yep, a semester's worth of credits already done. Yeah. So when I went there, my plan in college was focus on a degree plan, but focus on getting some of those gen eds out of the way first, so that I can really double up on the computer science courses to get my degree done as quick as possible. I went to Texas Southern University, which is an HBCU in Houston, Texas. And one thing I want to mention is that as you start to matriculate through certain programs, there may be a time where you have to take 18 credit hours, or you may delay your graduation because of low enrollment into the course and so on and so forth. So there were
am I sharing that, how like the reason why you have to take those 18 units at a time sometimes, because those classes aren't offered, right?
Yes.
There are certain semesters because the professors are not there.
Yep, there are certain semesters where they're offered, so you have to make a compromise or make a choice. There may be a fact where there may not be enough people. Certain schools, I know my school back then was the limit for undergraduate courses. The minimum amount of students that you need to have for a class in an undergrad course back at TSU was 10 at the time. So if you didn't have 10 students enrolled in the class didn't make the cut. It wasn't offered. So in certain cases, I had to do some convincing. And some of the convincing work, but ultimately that's how I was able to graduate in 3 years, was just really pushing through my degree plan and making the right choices, and being able to decide what course to take over the other one. that also led me to take some graduate courses to substitute for the courses that weren't offered.
Yeah. No, impressive, man. Impressive. No, nothing but kudos to you. I know very well that, that you work very, very hard during college, the early mornings, late nights, the whole nine. You're facing it
Man,
all.
man, I can explain to you the entire journey through college and how I got to where I am today to really position me there. If you want me to. But I would say ultimately, I would say this. I got to college at 6 a.m., then leave until 10 p.m.
Mm,
every day.
that's a
Sometimes on
14-hour
weekends.
shift, buddy.
Yeah. It's a lot.
The 14-hour shift.
Every day. Yep.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. No, and I commend you, man. I commend you. I commend you for that, for reals. So you graduated from college, and I assume during college you were working on campus, if I do recall.
Yes, I
So were
was.
you doing like a software development role, IT help desk, sysadmin? What did that look like?
So when I was
All
in
of
college,
it. Sometimes colleges, they milk you.
yeah, no, I was actually milking them. So when I was in college, I had a myriad of positions.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I was also one of the organizers or leaders of the cybersecurity club that we started on campus.
Well, you started a
Called
cybersecurity organization on campus?
I did.
You?
Yes,
Well, it
me
makes
and
it.
a good buddy of mine. He was actually the person that got me into cybersecurity because at the time I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, but he came up to me and his good buddy of mine, and he said, "Hey, do you want to learn how to hack into things?" And I said, "Is that legal?" And he was just like, "Well, ethical hacking is." And we met one Saturday, went down a rabbit hole, and I was like, you know what? Let's start a club. But I was already in. I was like, let's start a club. We need this, and we ended up co-organizing a club and started to teach people cybersecurity. And we actually started doing like some minor things at the university, like hacking into the printers and stuff like that, just to play around with things. But ultimately, that was one job because it was a job to organize a club, to
Right.
write the curriculum for the club, to meet or co-organize meetings and actually have things to talk about. The next thing that I did was I had in college, I worked as a help desk support engineer for the Office of Information Technology at TSU, basically supporting all of the computers and systems for all various different professors. So I go in, a professor will call me and be like, Damien, something's wrong with my computer. Can you come and check it out? I'll go walk to the building, check out the computer. If they need a new one, I go and I build it. If they need me to to service the computer on the spot, I do it. So I had a lot of experience like interacting with people and doing help desk stuff. And then I was also at one point in time a research assistant for my computer science department. And I think this was the most pivotal role that I've had because when I was when I was a research assistant, I was creating research presentations and presenting them at conferences
Yeah.
about unmanned vehicles. So I had
Oh, you're talking about
an
like
assignment.
risks of unmanned vehicles. Oh man, you're
And
getting
actually
into my line of work, man.
Yeah, like doing electrical work. So I was actually, I remember very vividly that my first presentation was me talking about this robot that I had programmed using MATLAB that would basically um, had the sensors themselves would move around in a specific course based
Right.
on whatever it is that's in the area. So it would be able to go, move, and then if it senses a block or something in front of it, it'll turn and it'll turn and it'll turn and go around in the course. And I was able to uh, make a poster, present that, and got my way into LSAMP through that as well.
Oh, you were in LSAP.
I was, but I
What?
didn't get into LSAMP getting by when I got into college. I got into LSAMP through a connection. And it was heaven sent because on my way back from this conference that usually happens in DC called ERN, which
Yeah.
is essentially a conference where you get all of the various different institutions and they present their research.
Right.
I met with the head coordinator for LSAMP on the flight back
Yeah.
home.
Love it.
And she said, yeah, I want you to come to my office on Monday. And we sit down, we have a discussion about getting you to LSAMP. And I said, okay, cool. Went to her office. She said, write this essay for me. She read my essay. She said, I'll see you next week. You come here and we're going to present you your research. So through LSAP, I was actually able to hone my public speaking skills by going to various different conferences and speaking on the things that I knew, the research that I'd done for the university while still working, doing things as a organizing a club and doing it. I did so much. Just say that I did a lot.
Oh my God. On top of taking 15 to 18 units a semester. Lord have mercy. Wow, you are incredible, my friend.
I appreciate it.
With with you graduating from college, right? You start your first job. What was that like, man? I believe you were a software engineer.
Yeah. So my first job, I was my first job was the job that I went back to after I had my internship there. So I started out as a security software development engineer at Verizon. But before then, I was a DevSecOps intern for the exact same team.
Okay.
So all the work that I did as an intern, I walked back into when I signed on. So that first job, it was on an application security tools team. So what I would do is I would basically develop custom tools for the various different security teams within the enterprise. Right. And one of the tools that I was the co-developer on was actually a custom DLP inspection tool, endpoint inspection tool that won a CISO 50 award. And when I first started, I was the second developer on a team of 3. So I was the second developer with the head developer or the distinguished member of staff or a distinguished technical member of staff, right? So I was there for about 5 months before we actually got anybody else on the team. So I had a direct link to the senior architect and developer to be able to figure out and come up with different issues and stuff like that. So I got a lot of mentorship from him and a lot of guidance from him on how to be able to make really good contributions. So I started there, but before I got to making any contributions, my manager gave me 2 weeks to learn how to code in Java. I had to learn the language from end to end. Because when I graduated,
in Java,
2 weeks.
Hold on.
And that was 2 weeks. Yep. 2 weeks that we agreed upon for me to learn that language. Because I didn't know Java when I got hired. I only knew C++ because that was the department's choice at my university.
Right.
So I literally took the training, finished it in 2 weeks, and then started to actually write code for the team. As far as work-life balance goes, when I was there for about 2.5 years. I would average about 40 to 50 hours a week working. And I did that. And I would also study outside of work because I needed to. There was a big gap in my knowledge as far as I knew how to code, but I didn't know how to code effectively or correctly.
Right.
There's a difference because you need to understand systems architecture and design. You need to understand optimization, or object-oriented programming and how that works. Runtime, all of those things I knew of, but I didn't know how to implement it in practice. So a lot of my studying back then was really just to become a better engineer, software engineer. That's what that was like.
Yeah. One thing you touched upon was how much you spent outside of work, early on in your career. And I assume to this day, you spend time learning. Do you feel like those hours you spent outside of work learning was necessary for you to grow in your career, or would you feel like you would have gotten to where you've gotten to today as a senior vice president without it, or without as much?
No, man. You got to learn. You got to spend time off the clock learning. And I think the big thing is, had I not set that time aside, I wouldn't be where I am today, because ultimately that time that I set aside helped me iterate a lot faster and move a lot faster in my career. Not only that, but it also set me apart from my peers, because I would go to work, I would write the code, I will present solutions, but what I would do is that I would go off the clock rather. I would then research some things. I will learn new things, new ideas, new strategies, new tools, new frameworks. I come back to work and I'd be like, hey, y'all, we using this, which might not be the best option if we have this instead. And they'll be like, well, what's that? So then I have to go and actually do more research, present on it, learn it, and then come back. And then from there, we come back, we implement something, and then all of a sudden, what we've implemented, other teams are starting to notice that, and they notice how awesome it is. So then they start to use it. And that ultimately got me recognition. Exactly. Yeah. So I think the key thing is when you are first starting your career is very vital to the success of your career, the longevity of your career, to take and set some time aside. It could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour a day, and just learn something new or learn how to be better at what it is that you're doing and learn how to be better at your craft.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love how you said that, it doesn't sound like you were saying, hey, you need to be coding every day. Although that's one way to go about it. You're saying, hey, just pick up something, learn something. Maybe it's you getting better at communication. Maybe it's you, learning about what are the new trends going on. What is artificial intelligence? What is, what are the latest of vulnerabilities being exploited by hackers across the world, right? And I just love how you said that. And learning is so many different ways you can learn, different things you can learn, and the learning just never stops, especially in tech. Matter of fact, talk about that, Damien. How how even the people who've been doing this for 30 years are still learning something new every day.
Dude, it's crazy because the folks that I look up to who are principal engineers and they're leading teams, they're learning on the job, dude. Like
By the
it's
way,
the first day every day.
My mom, I don't mean to cut your wisdom,
ahead.
brother. But principal, for those who don't know, principal is the highest level individual contributor you can go. So it's equivalent to, like almost C-suite essentially as an individual contributor, because principals, to be a principal, the amount of technical acumen and domain knowledge and multidisciplinary knowledge you have to have is insane. So that's what Damien's talking about. He's talking about his principal engineers that he looks up to are telling him, what do they tell you, Damien?
Hey, like Duan, his phrases, lab every day. They're basically labbing every day and on the clock too. It's a nonstop hustle of learning for them. They're always learning something new. So
yeah. So you're big into cloud security, application security, DevSecOps. Would you say that those domains are very not just lucrative, but as far as career opportunity over the long term, do you feel like they're going to be relevant for the long run?
absolutely. I can say from a DevSecOps standpoint, DevSecOps is still fundamentally new.
Okay.
The field itself is still fundamentally new, and there's still a lot of chatter around what classifies DevSecOps. Same thing with
There's not an
application.
agreed upon definition of, hey, this is it. We're all on the same page. Yeah, that tends to be a lot in this industry, to be honest. Can't even agree on
Yeah.
security. It's a whole rant for another day.
Yeah, right. So it will be around for quite a while because what people are starting to realize is that security is no longer and should no longer be an afterthought. It needs to be at the forefront of whatever it is that you're deciding to build. So with the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, that's a lot of things. That is the key methodology framework that software engineers use to be able to carry out and build out their applications. And the thing with DevSecOps is that it emphasizes the importance of not just deploying those solutions and creating those applications at a rapid speed, but making sure that we address all of the security issues and problems at the very beginning of that software development lifecycle, so that before it gets to being publicly accessible, we've already addressed all the vulnerabilities and risks and whatnot that hackers tend to try to exploit in order for them to be able to do whatever it is that they want to do to the application, whether it be they want to deframe or ruin an organization's reputation, or they want to steal some money. Whatever happens, we have all of that taken care of before it makes it to that point, to the end point.
Yeah. So, listen, I remember a few years ago we had a conversation at reInvent, and we just started talking about technical debt, risks, and you were just going on a whole tirade on, you guys need to have business continuity, disaster recovery, encrypted data at rest, and we would talk about cloud, AWS. We could go on for hours. Well, I can't go on for hours. He can. He has enough knowledge to go on for hours. Well, I want to talk to you about is the difference between DevOps and DevSecOps, and why, the sec portion. I think you already touched upon it, but mind driving that point home of why the sec is necessary in the DevOps conversation.
Oh yes, this is literally like what I'm all about. So let me explain to you in this regard then. So what is DevOps? Let's start there. So what DevOps is essentially a software development methodology that emphasizes the importance of collaboration between the dev teams and the operations teams in order to be able to automate processes that would increase the speed, reliability, and also the stability of said deployments. And what I mean by deployments is application deployments, because what we're deploying are applications, right? DevOps itself is pretty much, I would say, streamlining everything within the SDLC in an agile form.
Development lifecycle.
Right? Exactly.
Out the door. Okay.
Yep. But it's agile, right? So the agile methodology is essentially all of DevOps. That's really what it is. If we really want to sit there and be honest with each other. Right. Now, when it comes down to DevSecOps is just an extension of DevOps. You got to know DevOps before you know DevSecOps, because DevSecOps is an extension of it, right? The key difference between the two is that DevSecOps is basically the inception point where security is baked into every aspect of the SDLC and every aspect of DevOps. Right. So this is where, with DevOps, we're all focused on speed, velocity, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to get everything there to production as fast as possible, right? While still being reliable and robust. With DevSecOps, it's just like, okay, we can do that, but how do we achieve all of that with baking security into this? Right. So that's where you start to figure out how to include those security best practices and tools, threat modeling those applications at the very beginning. That whole shift left concept is DevSecOps related, right? All of that is basically saying that we want to make sure that we bake security into the entire DevOps workflow, right? And ensure that we're deploying things securely while still maintaining that velocity and deploying those applications rapidly. And the key thing with DevSecOps is that, and the reason why it's so important is because it decreases all those security incidents and risks and vulnerabilities, and ensures that all of the applications that are being deployed are secure by default. Secure by design. There we go. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, and I love the definition of education here. And it sounds like we should be iterating throughout that whole spiel that you just had. Is that DevSecOps is good for the organization because it's going to cost you much more to address risks and vulnerabilities later in the SDLC. For those who don't know, that's the software development lifecycle from inception all the way to production, where you release it to your end user / customer. And I love the idea of shifting left. Hey, let's address it early on. It's kind of like it's a philosophy of life, really. Address the problems early on.
Yeah,
address it early on. If I'm upset with Damien, right, I'm not going to wait 6 months till I see him at another conference, or 3 months till I see him at another conference to address it. I'm going to call Damien. I'm going to address it early on. Yeah, because it's much more catastrophic if I address it later, because that anger is going to be brewing. DevSecOps is similar. You address it early on, and you solve lots of problems. Maybe not all of them, but you solve lots of them.
Yep, it's a proactive approach to ensuring that we all keep jobs.
That's
really what it is.
Let's keep our jobs. So I know you're also an expert in Appsec, and there's definitely a lot of overlap between DevSecOps and Appsec, but they're not necessarily the same thing, are they?
They are not. They
Okay,
are that.
gotcha. But I've heard some thought leaders in the space say eventually, well, not DevSecOps, but eventually, like the conversation of cloud security eventually will just be AppSec. You know, down the line.
Interesting.
Yeah, very
That's
interesting. I know.
interesting.
And again, this is not me saying, but I've seen some folks say. So I'd love to just get your thoughts on it because every time we talk, I feel like I'm getting $1 million masterclass.
It's
That's
all
right, folks. You're
good.
getting $1 million masterclass for free. Buy that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is with AppSec is different from CloudSec, and
Okay.
AppSec is also different from DevSecOps.
Okay.
And the
Cool.
only reason I'm saying I'm gonna break it down like this. Now, there's some interchangeability
Right.
between all of that, right? But the concepts and fundamental concepts and fields are different. So, what application security is, right, is basically a subfield of cybersecurity, right? Because cybersecurity is a big umbrella. You got
It
pen
is.
tests, you got
It's a big umbrella.
security analysts, right?
Yeah.
Application security is a subfield of that. And what it ultimately focuses on is the practices and various different measures that can be implemented around securing web applications from hackers who seek to compromise them applications, right? Most web applications tend to be the main point of inception anyway. So the thing with AppSec that we got to understand is that it's created or cultivated of some of the key aspects that we all should know. So what application security, I have three. There's multiple, but I just pick out these top three that really resonate with me based on my experience. And that is, we got to talk about, or application security as a whole is made up of software development practices, right? So
Right.
what it does is that it emphasizes the importance of secure coding for developers, because ultimately you can't sit here and there's a specific way you need to be able to communicate with the database to grab that information, right? Well, very well of the OWASP top 10. Some of those
What is
OWASP
it, by the
top
way?
10,
OWASP top 10.
I think it stands for Open Web Application Security Project. And what it is basically a repository of the top 10 most common web application security issues.
Right. So
So
I'm a security practitioner. I should be familiar. Not maybe not know everything on there, but I should be familiar with them to get
yeah,
an idea of what's going on in the industry.
yeah. And correction for OWASP is actually Open Worldwide Application Security Project.
Worldwide.
There we go.
Wow. It's an
So
international
it's
community.
exactly. So the thing is that this is a repository that contains the top 10, and these vulnerabilities are updated regularly, right?
Right.
Because things change. So it's definitely something that you can look to as a guide to figure out what are some of the things that are constantly an issue with web applications as a whole.
Right.
Some of them could be authentication and authorization issues. There could be SQL injection issues, or
That's a
so on
big
and so
common
forth.
one. I feel like it's been there for years and it's not going away.
And the reason I can tell you that from my personal experiences is not going to go away is because a lot of the authorization and authentication mechanisms rely on frameworks and like libraries to help developers build it. And the thing is, when you import these libraries into these web applications, sometimes they're not scanned, right? Which ultimately we can get into a whole nother thing called supply chain security, because that's what happened with Log4j. But that's a different discussion in itself.
We can cook.
What I'm saying
We
is,
can get well, not me, but him. He can get cooking for a long time.
yeah, I can go out of scope, but the key thing is that we really gotta conduct and make sure that these developers are following the security coding best practices, and they're conducting reviews on the code bases when they raising the PRs, and they're testing out these libraries and scanning them that they're using and import to make developing life a little bit easier, so that they don't have vulnerabilities that are inherently added into the application that impacts it in a negative form.
Secure by design.
Secure by design. And that's when we get into the security testing portion of it. So with application security, you'll hear these two buzzwords come out a lot, and it is SAST and DAST. So SAST is static application security testing, and DAST stands for dynamic application security testing. Now, there's two key things and two key differences. Static application security testing is the ability to be able to scan your code from a static point of view that's already checked into GitHub or whatever source code repository you use, and it'll scan it to identify any vulnerabilities that are existing within your code, right? So you can be writing like 5 lines of code to be able to connect to a database.
Right.
But the tool that you're using, whether it be like Fortify or Checkmark, SonarQube, or whatever, would be like, you can't do it this way because this way is susceptible to SQL injection. This way is susceptible to X, Y, and Z. So instead of coding it this way, you need to import this library and then have it to where we're sanitizing the data that comes in. So we're protecting the database. That's one way. When it comes to dynamic application security testing, this is where we start to actually, when the application is running, there's a tool that basically fuzzes it, the web application, and it basically tests out which parts of the application is vulnerable. So this is where you get into like OAuth Zap, which is basically like a pen testing, web application pen testing tool that is automated, and it'll basically fuzz your entire application and figure out which parts it was able to compromise and be like, yeah, this is a problem. So that thing, those two tools will help identify like the vulnerabilities in a web application. And then it also provides the mitigation strategies you need to protect your web application as well. So Appsec in a whole is a different beast, simply put, and it's a different subfield. And there's different tools, frameworks, processes, and methodologies that comprise or make up web application security or application security as a whole.
Damien, folks, I know I sound like a fanboy right now, but I kid you not. Every time I talk to this guy, I'm learning so many new things because, he's very knowledgeable. And on top of that, he loves sharing what he learns. And that's what I like about Damien. He's the anti-gatekeeper. He just shares everything that he can when it comes to, what he's learning, the new skills he's picking up, some industry trends. And yeah, Damien, this is good. This is good. And now we're gonna get to the main dish, so to speak.
Yeah.
We're gonna address the elephant in the room. You were an SVP, senior vice president, at a big organization.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say your age, but you are young. Really, capital R, really young. And you were able to claw and climb up the ranks in such a short amount of time. And that in itself is a big feat. When you're at such a high level, with all these people who look up to you, all these people that you're responsible for, how does that feel, man? How does it feel?
Well, I'll say my age. So I'm 26 years old right now. My birthday is actually in a couple of weeks. So I'll be 27, but I think
happy early birthday, bro.
Hey, appreciate it.
Yeah.
But there's two key feelings that really reside with me. And I think the first one I'm gonna mention is a rather positive one, and is I'm very pride. Simply because my humble beginnings, I come from a family that was lower middle class, right? Really, I would say lower economy period, right? We didn't have a lot of money. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon. I had to work for what I had to get. And I think the thing is just that, me being from, originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, moved around a lot of my life. At 26 years old, I didn't think I'd be here at all. I didn't think I would be at this position in my life. And for me to be able to look back and to reflect on my journey from a baby all the way up until now is it's crazy. Honestly, and I'm blessed to be in a position like this. And I'm always very cognizant of remaining humble, because at the end of the day, I understand that these things could also be taken away from me if my head get too big. So, that's one thing, is that I'm very proud of who I am, and I'm very proud of being able to be in this position and to be able to, give guidance back and send that olive branch back down and help people who look like me and who want to be in the same position get to this position and give them a blueprint, right? But there's also the other part, which is, in order for me to get here, there was a lot of discomfort. There's a little bit of anxiety, and I'm a little anxious, simply because at this position in my life, it's less about knowing how to build things and more about how to work with people.
Wow.
Knowing how to manage process and knowing how to manage the quality of work that's coming out the gate. And the key thing is that you have to know how to manage and work with people. You got to know how to manage and work with process. And you got to understand the technology that the process is building, or the process is going to be reliant on, in order for you to be able to determine whether or not this is a good idea for the business. So it requires a different level of foresight that I am working on attaining.
Yeah.
And it also requires me to hone my leadership skills. And what I've learned from, just the leadership, the things that I'm doing as a leader, it's a lifelong practice. And I'm a firm believer and I know you are as well, that in order for you to lead, you must follow, and you must know who to follow. And the big thing is that, with leading people, it also, you're going to make mistakes, and the mistakes that you make, you'll learn from that experience. So for me, it's the constant feeling of being uncomfortable.
Yeah. It never ends, huh?
It never ends. The moment you feel like you're getting complacent is the moment you got to give yourself a reality check and be like, hold on now. Don't get too comfortable. Things may change at the drop of a hat. And, I'm dealing with the managerial aspect now and the engineering aspect. So it's a bit of a challenge, I would say, because it's two conflicting mindsets.
Right.
That I have to manage.
That's crazy. And it makes a lot of sense, because now you're not just figuring out what's the best technical solution. Now you're looking at, okay, what's the best technical solution given the current amount of capital and budget that we have?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You only have so many bodies.
Yep.
Various levels of competence and skill level.
Yes.
Different cultures, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different, just different people.
Yes.
And
things are not black and white.
I wish it was. I wish it was. You get a magic wand, but all right, everybody, we're on the same page.
It's not. So it's a different mindset you got to have. And I realize that it's more than what people make it out to be. I think a lot of folks who are in leadership positions tend to simplify things, but like you see with this one picture that always comes up at the when you're sailing over the water, you see the iceberg. And it's very small, but underneath it is a whole big old tip that probably will sink the Titanic if they hit it again, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. No,
There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, and did you feel like, going back for a master's, was worth it, now that you're at SVP? I mean, because I remember you got your master's about a year or two ago, and, we see a lot of slander of college, right? And some people say, throw college away. And some people say, you have to go to college. Me personally, I'm more in the middle, like, well, go to college on these conditions. Where are you at on that, Damien? Because, I do think absolute advice doesn't, like, that type of advice is kind of dangerous.
Yeah. I'm in the middle. And the only reason why I say it is because I know that where I come from, college can be a luxury.
Yeah.
A lot of people, typically brothers like myself who come from where I come from, usually don't make it out, right? So college can be a luxury. I'll always say this: if you can afford to go, choose to go, because no matter what, the education is not something that no one can take away from you. It's something that can always help you, right? Knowledge is power, right? And no matter what, the more knowledgeable you are, the more informed you can. The better your ability will be to make informed decisions in the future.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that college in itself can help you with that. College in itself can equip you with the fundamentals you need to know, speaking specifically towards tech, right? What the fundamentals you need to get started, but it's not going to be enough for you to get your foot in the door where you need to be. So the best advice that I can give somebody that's looking to go to college to get into tech cybersecurity is go for the degree if you can afford to, and it's not going to put you in some severe debt. Get it. And then from there, piggyback, get the certifications while you're in college, because those are ultimately going to help you stand apart from your peers. And it's also going to help you or equip you with the knowledge that you need to be able to get your foot into the door, to be able to put what you've learned in theory into practice. And as far as it helping me out getting my master's, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it. I did not realize it, but when I got my master's degree, I got it from the University of Maryland Global Campus. So I have a master's in cybersecurity technology. A lot of my program, I wrote papers. I had a paper due every 2 weeks, and it was not a short paper. It was about a 20 to 30 page paper, double spaced.
And you got to cite the resources.
And got to cite the resources.
I know, because I went there too.
It's not a degree that you could just go to sleep on and be like, yeah, I can wake up the next day and just do it. Now you're going to be grinding. You're going to grind away. So, but the key thing with that degree is that it taught me how to write, which is key in leadership. It taught me how to present myself and how to present, because I had to present to other people, right? I had to record presentations and put them together. It also taught me how to work with people, work with teams virtually, which is something that we do every day in tech. I work with people from various different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And that is a skill that you got to learn, honestly. And my degree program, it definitely taught me that. So it was worth it. But guess what? I ain't pay for it out of my pocket. So if I had to sit up there and say, would I get a master's degree if I had to pay for it out of my pocket? The answer would be no. Right. So if you work for an organization, always make sure you check in to see what your organization is willing to pay for. That also includes certifications. And if they gonna pay for it, you better pay for it. You better go ahead and level up on them. Because guess what? At the end of the day, if they're willing to invest in you, it's a company that you need to stay at, and it's worth staying at.
Yeah, I agree. You know, if you're going to be with a company, you know, you choose an organization to be a part of. Choose an organization that believes in investing in you, because right, certifications are not cheap, but they're cheaper than these college degrees. Absolutely. And the companies want to pay for boot camps, degrees, courses, certifications, the whole nine. Yeah, take advantage of it, because you're, in my opinion, I believe you're leaving money on the table.
You have no idea how many folks I have spoken to over the years that have worked in organizations that didn't even bother to ask the right questions. Ask those questions when you work for these companies. Because when I tell them,
they might have a budget, you might not know about it.
Yeah. Oh, bro, these other people, I'll tell people all the time, these companies got billions of dollars. Okay, somebody gonna pay for something, because I'm not leaving here without something. What did Denzel Washington say? I ain't leaving here without something. I'm coming out of here for something. So you know what I'm saying? Like, we gonna come something. They gonna pay for something.
It's gonna cost you. You want me to work? It's gonna cost you. It's gonna cost.
That's it. You need me to implement the solution. I need to be trained. So what we got in the training budget? Oh, we gonna send you to a couple of SANS courses. Bet.
By the way, folks, for context, SANS is one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive, cybersecurity curriculum that exists. Number one. Number two, it's pretty legit. I got to give them credit. SANS, in my opinion, is pretty legit. Like, you know, I'm pretty harsh on people charging extreme amounts of money for mediocre curriculum, but SANS, as expensive as it is, it's by practitioners. The teachers aren't people who just started in cybersecurity yesterday. These are battle tested, seasoned practitioners, been in all types of scenarios, and they're in the industry. They innovate. They do research. This is their lifestyle. This is who they are. right? So those are the people teaching these courses. So I'm a fan of SANS, but yeah, go ahead, Damien, getting that SANS course.
Yeah, they gonna pay for it. They will find ways to pay for it if they want to do it. So don't hesitate to ask those questions and push to get what it is that you need.
Yeah,
because they're gonna pay for it. But yeah, I agree. SANS is legit.
SANS, SANS is
Legit.
legit. Like, I know the people. I know some of these people that teach their courses and have taken their courses. I'm like, wow, it's
They
legit.
they tell you things that the companies don't want you to know. And
Now,
you learn about the real stuff. You don't get the watered down sales pitch. You was like, listen, it say it may work this way in the docs. It don't work that way, bro. You got to do this.
yeah. No, shout out to SANS. Shout out to SANS. With the emergence of artificial intelligence, and this is something I've been asking my guests, and I'm really curious. As you're aware, Damon, artificial intelligence is disrupting everything, right? Almost, if not everything, most things, especially the tech space. As far as artificial intelligence and cloud security, incident response, penetration testing, cybersecurity as a whole, in your line of work specifically as an SVP, and for the people that work with you, what do you see being, what do you feel like is going to change in the future? Because right now there's one way of doing things right now, right? We do have ChatGPT being integrated across companies. Folks are starting to leverage that a bit more. But what do you see being the future of the Appsec professional, the DevSecOps professional in terms of AI?
Well, two perspectives I got for you. One for DevSecOps and then one for application security. With the use of artificial AI, I know a lot of people. I'm sorry, artificial intelligence or AI. I know a lot of people are more concerned about job security than anything.
Oh yeah, Twitter's
Because
going crazy, LinkedIn's going crazy.
right,
Even me, sometimes
right.
if I watch that content too much, I start sweating bullets a little more. But I'm like, all right, I got to
Yeah,
be careful how much of that I take because there's a lot of doom
yeah.
content.
There's a lot of doom content, but here's the thing about AI. To me, it's all smoke and mirrors until you really understand what it is. A lot of AI really is just a bunch of like crazy mathematical statements and proofs. At least that's what I think, right? Now, I'm not trained in artificial intelligence, so don't quote me on any of these things.
Yeah. Let them know.
However,
Don't crucify them in the comments.
yeah, right. But what I'm gonna say is that from a DevSecOps perspective, AI or not, we ain't going nowhere. And the reason why I feel that way is because if AI is the future, which it is, then DevSecOps engineers are going to have to leverage AI and understand it a little bit more from a deployment stance on how to be able to secure the deployments of the models into the applications and whatnot. So still going to be necessary because at the end of the day, the artificial intelligence web applications or apps themselves are going to need some type of deployment process, right? So operations ain't going nowhere. It's just going to become a bit more complex and convoluted because we might have to create different pipelines that meet artificial intelligence needs or to be able to deploy different models a specific way. It's just an extra layer of abstraction and complexity on top of what it is that we already do. Right. So DevSecOps is mostly about how do we secure the pipeline deployments for AI models and the AI web applications. Application security, on the other hand, I feel it's the same thing, but the key difference is that the application security engineers and penetration testers are going to have to figure out, are really going to need to understand AI at a much deeper level.
Really, like under the hood?
They may have to understand it under the hood because you got to figure out how to secure it. You also got to think about ethics, right? You also got to have to think about. You're also going to have to think about from an applications perspective, how are they even implementing this? Like, what's the channel that they're using to communicate with the model or whatever the engine is on the background that's querying the model to give you the response, right? There's a whole different layer that they need to figure out how to be able to breach and how to be able to compromise. So if there's anything that's going to come about from AI, from an application security standpoint, there's going to be a new category for different vulnerabilities and risks and stuff like that that they're going to have to come up with just for AI specific web applications. Right.
Interesting. So, so your vulnerabilities are unique to AI scenarios.
Yes,
Oh man, this gets
exactly.
crazy. Because
So it's going to get nutty.
yeah, because I'm thinking, I'm like, well, you need a really good pen tester or application security practitioner who also understands the AI. That's a whole new. That's a whole new discipline.
Exactly.
That's a whole new domain.
Exactly. Just how cloud security became a whole new domain. We're going to
Yeah,
have AI security because there's going to be a new domain. So then you're going to have another spinoff, AI application security engineers or AI DevOps engineers or DevSecOps engineers. It's going to be a new discipline, but it's another layer of abstraction that's just going to be tacked on to whatever job that you're doing. And from an application standpoint, especially security standpoint, you're really going to have to understand how that's all going to work. So if you fuzz it and you're just like entering random stuff into whatever the box is on the web app, and the model's responding with passwords and stuff like that, don't you think that's a breach, right? It's compromise, right? So still, application security engineers are going to be like, well, this is a risk. Now the question is, we figured out what that is and what the vulnerability is when we fuzzed it, but there isn't much documentation on how we're going to be able to fix it, huh? So now we have to figure out how we're going to be able to fix it and how we're going to work with the AI engineers and machine learning engineers to fix all of that.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And it sounds like, Damien, from what you're sharing too, is that there's a delicate balance because, as you know, being a DevSecOps practitioner, companies they're going to deploy the code. They got money to make. They got people to impact with their applications. You know, you know. It sounds like with the integration of AI, for that, the answer for the cybersecurity practitioner is not necessarily to shy away from it, but more of, work with the developers building these models and these tools, you know, and collaborate with them to mitigate that risk rather than saying it's too risky. We're not leveraging AI. We're not using, ChatGPT, Bard, Gemini, whatever,
Absolutely. We need to work with the AI ML engineers to understand what's being implemented, to eliminate the smoke and really see what the reflection is in the mirror,
Yeah,
right?
what we don't know is
And
scary. When you don't know,
yeah,
I don't know what's about to happen. This is kind of scary,
yeah,
yeah.
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 We got to understand that. We got to understand how it's all being computed. We got to understand the type of data that is going to be shared, right? Because all of that's
is it PHI?
we need to classify it, right? We got to classify where the data is coming from. Like, I think that, these AI models that's being built, like they're all being trained, but they're
By
trained
who?
on what subset of data and by who?
By who? Humans.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Humans. And we're
Yep.
flawed. So the AI is going to be flawed.
Yeah. So it's just like, I think ethics really plays a big part in it. But what I really want to mention, and I know that this is really not really talked about a lot, but I think threat modeling is going to become a really key asset in just all things AI.
Really?
Yes.
Like you're saying,
And
like a threat modeling is getting to a point now where, hey, we're going to assign you a full-time 40-hour work week. You're going to do nothing but threat modeling for us. Like, is it getting there? Because you know how before, like, there was no such thing as a FinOps engineer. But nowadays, like, hey, listen, we need, like, because usually the DevOps engineers would be responsible for FinOps. Well, FinOps is everybody's responsibility, but to a degree. But now there are roles where, hey, your job is to optimize our spend, when we're developing products. Is it kind of like that where, threat modeling will, like, you see that getting to a point where, like, hey, your job is to threat model, and threat model some more,
yes.
with these, yeah.
Yes. And the reason why is because the threats are going to increase exponentially with AI because, again, we're trusting the computer to be able to return whatever it is that we need.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the AI tool platform framework is going to rely on something. And we need to understand what that something is. And we need to be able to understand from a holistic point of view, what all does this thing need to function? And which parts of it is more risky for it to use than others,
Like a
right?
least privileged mindset. Like,
Yes.
do we need more? Like, yeah, you don't want too much. What's enough?
Yeah. And I think these models, they're being trained, right? And they're being trained against something.
Mm-hmm.
But is some of the model itself may grow, but how does that impact the state of the security for our organization with whatever's being accepted into this model? So I think, based on my understanding of what threat modeling is and what threat modelers do, they're going to become a hell of a lot more important, and it's going to become a lot more significant. The niche itself, the role of threat modeling for all applications, especially when it comes to AI. Yeah.
That's yeah. I wasn't aware. I don't think too often about how risky AI can get and how ugly it can get. Because you brought up supply chain security earlier on in the show, and if, like, for example, we're using public libraries and the library is compromised and we didn't do enough vetting, we're in a tight predicament.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we're using models that that we didn't build, it was like an open source model, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's another risk that you have to consider, be mindful of. And now it brings the questions of, okay, what processes do we have in place to mitigate these?
Yeah.
Yeah, future's looking interesting. What we're trying to say is, if you're in cybersecurity right now and you learn a little bit of AI, congratulations, you're in business.
Yes. Yeah. You're setting yourself up for the future.
Yeah.
You get a head start, and there's going to be jobs for cybersecurity professionals who are very knowledgeable of AI, because they're going to need those who are very well versed in AI and ML.
Right. So it's kind of like cloud when it was like 10, 14 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
If you just had a certification, you were good.
Yep.
Good. You were like, oh my God. Oh, this is our cloud guy. He's certified. Get him in. This is our cloud gal. Get her in.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, Damien, this has been really good, my friend. I really appreciate you just sharing your knowledge, your story, and how you became a senior vice president. How you got started in tech. Some of the challenges that you had. Man, this was really good, bro. Where can the people find you? Because I know you make content. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, so they can definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm also on TikTok now, Instagram and Twitter, or X. It's still Twitter to me. I'm pretty sure it's still Twitter to a lot of people. You can find me on those 4 platforms at Damien J. Burks. Damien J. Burks. If you also look me up, you'll also see my website, which is damienjburks.com. And then for those who are more interested in just learning more about DevSecOps, DevOps, cloud security, follow me on my YouTube channel at DevSec Blueprint, which is one of my other things that I've started, which right now it's just a YouTube channel, but eventually it'll turn into something a bit more, because it's going to be more heavily focused on DevSecOps and cloud security, and how we can build a better future, or cultivate a better culture for DevSecOps professionals, increase the visibility, and start to really dive into what does it take to be a DevSecOps engineer and how to build pipelines, all technical content. So you can check me out on those platforms.
I love it. I love it. There you have it, folks. Damien Burks, thank you again, man. Until next time, folks, Tech Prep Podcast. We are here. We're learning. We're sharing stories, and this is why we're here. We're here to learn from one another and grow. So, Damien, thank you again, my friend. We are done.
All right.